we get into it, we talked about the coaches on our channel and, what it's going to mean for the program in general. But this is a recruiting show, so let's focus a little bit on what this means for recruiting. Gino Guidugli and Gerad Parker, obviously now the two guys had the most buzz these last couple of weeks here, and we thought it might be Andy Ludwig. Weren't really sure what it was going to look like. Gerad Parker gets the promotion, but let's start with Gino Guidugli. What do you think this is going to mean to Notre Dame as far as recruiting?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like Ludwig was, looking like he was going to come in as quarterbacks and offensive coordinator. I believe he's 58 years old, and I mean, age doesn't matter for recruiting, right? I mean, you can be 70 or you can be 25, and you can be a lazy recruiter, you can be an active recruiter. But typically, the older you get, the less you kind of want to deal with 16, 17-year-olds. Like, my dad's in his 60s. He doesn't like dealing with, even me, and I'm 29 years old. So, and putting up with my crap. But in all seriousness, Guidugli, he's got the gray hair, so he's got a little bit of experience. And he still has that energy. He fits the Marcus Freeman style of coach. Oh, wow. Look at this fancy graphic we have. Sorry, I was not expecting that.
We got surprises for you today, Mike. We're back.
I mean, he was super productive in high school. He threw 78 touchdowns at Cincinnati and over 11,000 passing yards. He's coached running backs, quarterbacks. He was going to be the tight ends coach at Wisconsin. He followed Luke Fickell from Cincinnati to Wisconsin. And then he jumped at that opportunity to coach the position he's much more comfortable with. And I'm sure, I mean, he probably had to felt a little slighted, right? Like he was the OC at Cincinnati this past season. And then they bring in Phil Longo from North Carolina as Wisconsin's offensive coordinator. So if I'm Guidugli, I'm probably thinking, man, like, I'm probably not super thrilled about that. And then I get an opportunity to go, Wisconsin, Notre Dame. I'll take with Notre Dame and be the quarterback's coach, which he's probably much more comfortable with that. And quarterbacks coaches are often the offensive coordinators. Now I know Gerad Parker is not. Chip Long wasn't at Notre Dame, but typically I'd say 80% of the time, if not more, the quarterback's coach is the offensive coordinator. So, if you're this, hot shot Notre Dame quarterbacks coach, whether it's at Notre Dame or somewhere else, you're probably going to be an offensive coordinator soon. So I think this is a really good job for Gino Guidugli. Not only is a potential stepping stone for him to go be an offensive coordinator somewhere else, but again, maybe at Notre Dame. So again, when you look at this Marcus Freeman coaching staff from Guidugli to Parker, maybe Chris Watt on the offensive line, Al Washington, to Chris O'Leary and Mike Mickens, all of those guys worked with Freeman before he became the Notre Dame head coach. I can't remember the exact timeline on Watt, and it would have been at Notre Dame as defensive coordinator. I can't remember if he was at Tulane at that point. And then O'Leary was a graduate assistant, or no, he was the safeties coach. For Freeman when Freeman was defensive coordinator. But like Freeman's hiring these guys that he knows. He's taken some swings, right? He took a chance on a guy like Chancey Stuckey. He pulled Dylan McCullough out of Indiana. And of course, McCullough was the running backs coach for the Chiefs when they won their first title, a few years back. When I say first title, I mean like in this little era here. He went and got Al Golden from the Bengals. So he's going outside of his tree to make some of these hires that he really likes, but also he's saying, all right, who am I comfortable with? Who do I know that are going to kill it on the recruiting trail? Gino Guidugli, a source told me, who's worked with both of these guys in the past, that they're foxhole guys. Like, I mean, I want a foxhole guy. Trey Yannity, for me, is a foxhole guy. Like, I know Trey, just this week, Trey and I are talking about, hey, what new microphone do we want to get Mike Goolsby? Because Mike Goolsby has crappy audio. And we're like, I trust Trey Yannity. Now, if Trey the microphone Trey picked for Goolsby is bad, then we'll have to reassess. But like a foxhole guy, that means a lot, right? I always say this with in this college football world, we just think of it like it's NCAA 14 or Madden 23. Like it's just numbers, right? Your overall, your speed, your acceleration, like it's just from 0 to 100. but it's not like it's just not like these are real people with real egos. You can have Gerad Parker, who you're very familiar with and trust, and you know he's going to do a good job in your room. That chemistry, that camaraderie is really important. Whereas if you have a guy who's maybe more talented of a play caller than him, but doesn't fit, that's an overall negative for your program. And I'm not saying that was Tommy Rees. Maybe it was at times, but I just think that from and I'm looking at this glass half full. I'm the first to admit that, but you look at these two hires from Freeman's perspective, and they're guys he can trust, and that's obviously very important. Yeah, all right. Sticking back to the recruiting side of things and kind of getting into the nuts and bolts there, Gino Guidugli is going to be recruiting Chicago for Notre Dame. He's got ties there. He even recruited Cam Williams, Notre Dame's 2024 elite receiver commit. He was highly considering Cincinnati. CJ Carr even visited Cincinnati and had an offer from the Bearcats. But caliber of those guys, ended up at a Group of 5 school, but did really like Guidugli and what he was pitching. So again, strong ties in Chicago. That's where Rees recruited. And for folks watching this, like, were you impressed with Tommy Rees's impact in Chicago? Just kind of meh. I think most Notre Dame fans will say that Notre Dame is lost out on some big time Chicago talent. I mean, you just look at guys like Caleb Brown and Tyler Morris. What were they in the 22 recruiting class? Maybe Caleb Brown's 21. I can't remember, but some big time pass catchers out of there that Notre Dame was not able to get. So yeah, Guidugli in Chicago. Parker will be involved with all the positions offensively. Obviously, he's been helping recruiting quarterbacks in the interim period before he was elevated, and then after Rees left. And he does a really good job for the Irish, in Tennessee, the Carolinas, Kentucky. He's I don't know how many people want to spend a couple days in Raleigh, Durham, recruiting and then going down to South, like, not the most glamorous recruiting areas to recruit, but Parker does it, and he's done a really good job. So I actually had a story that I wrote this would have been last February when he was hired. I talked to someone close to, I was familiar with him as a recruiter, called him a war daddy. So I kind of updated that article at Blue and Gold, and yeah, I mean, being called a war daddy, and this is a story I highly recommend reading this if you're a subscriber of Blue and Gold. If you're not, like Trey mentioned, $29.99. Really diving into Parker, the recruiter, Guidugli, what my sources are saying. Have quotes from Cam Williams on Guidugli, Jack Larson, and Cooper Flanagan talk about Gerad Parker being elevated. So some really good stuff. But yeah, being called a war daddy, I don't care what that is. That you're being called a war daddy for, but Trey, that's a compliment, man. Like, I want to be a war daddy. I don't know what it means, but I know I like it. All right, that's probably 6 minutes. I'm gonna take a sip of water.